I won $4.8 million lottery, but my wife's lawyer uncle had other plans. I need to tell you about the day my life split into before and after. Not because something good happened, because I realized I'd been living in a cage I helped build. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are when I grab my coffee at the gas station on Route 9 and buy my lottery tickets. Same ritual for 6 years. $2. Powerball and Mega Millions. Lisa hated it. Every single week she'd make some comment about throwing money away, about how we could use those $2 for something practical, something that mattered. I'd just nod and keep doing it anyway, because those $2 were the only thing in my budget I controlled completely. I'm a senior software engineer. Sounds fancy. It's not. It means I fix other people's garbage code at 3 in the morning when systems crash and everyone panics. It means I make decent money, but I'm tired all the time. Tired in my bones. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. That morning I'd left the house at 7:30. Like always. Lisa was already dressed in her gray pantsuit, the one she wears when she has depositions. She's a paralegal, makes about $60,000 a year, and never lets me forget that she contributes. Her coffee mug sat on the counter, with a ring of lipstick on the rim, plum-colored. The smell of her perfume hung in the kitchen, that expensive stuff that comes in the black bottle. I grabbed my travel mug and headed out. The gas station was the same as always. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The clerk barely looked up from his phone when I walked in. I grabbed my tickets from the machine, folded them into my wallet, and forgot about them. 3 days later, I was sitting in my car in the Walmart parking lot. I'd stopped to grab milk and bread on the way home from work. My phone was almost dead, so I plugged it into the charger and pulled out my wallet to reorganize some receipts that had been building up. That's when I saw the tickets. I don't know why I decided to check them right then. Maybe boredom. Maybe the universe has a sick sense of humor. I pulled up the lottery website on my phone and started comparing numbers. First ticket, nothing. Second ticket, I matched the first number. Then the second. My heart started doing this weird thing where it felt like it was beating too slow and too fast at the same time. Third number matched. Fourth. Fifth. The Powerball number matched. I sat there staring at my phone screen. The numbers didn't change. I checked them again. Then again. I counted on my fingers like a kindergartner to make sure I wasn't seeing things. All 6 numbers. Perfect match. The jackpot was listed at $8.2 million. After taxes, after the IRS takes their bite, after everything, it would be about $4.8 million, maybe a little more depending on state taxes. I should have felt something. Joy, excitement, relief. Instead, I felt cold, calculating. Because the first thought that entered my mind wasn't about what I'd buy or where I'd travel. It was about Lisa. I sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes. The milk was getting warm in the back seat. I didn't care. My brain was running simulations like it does when I'm debugging code. If I tell Lisa what happens next, she'll be excited at first. Then she'll want a plan. She'll want to tell her mother, her uncle who's a lawyer. They'll all have opinions about what we should do with the money, how we should invest it, how we should protect it. Protect it from what? From me, probably. 3 years ago, I made a mistake. I went to a poker game with some guys from work. It was supposed to be casual. $20 buy-in. Nothing serious. I ended up losing $2,000. I know. I'm an idiot. It was money from our savings account. Money Lisa had been setting aside for a new roof. She lost her mind. Not the yelling kind of losing it. The cold, strategic kind. She sat me down at the kitchen table with her laptop and a stack of printed papers. She told me we were going to sign a postnuptial agreement. A postnup. Basically a prenup, but after you're already married. The agreement was simple. Any money she earned was hers. Completely separate. If I gambled again or made any major financial decision without consulting her, she could file for divorce and keep everything she'd earned during the marriage. I didn't have a choice. I'd screwed up, so I signed. Here's the beautiful irony. Lisa's lawyer uncle drafted that agreement. He was thorough, really thorough. Buried in Section 4, subsection C, there was a clause about gambling winnings. It stated that any income derived from gambling, lotteries, or games of chance would be considered separate property of the person who won it. Lisa had insisted on that clause. She wanted to make sure that if I ever won anything gambling, it couldn't be used to cover my gambling debts or affect her finances. She was protecting her money from my stupidity, making sure that if I won $50 at a poker game, I couldn't claim it was marital property to pay off my losses. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from my potential losses that she legally separated any potential winnings too. Her greed and paranoia had just handed me a get-out-of-jail-free card worth $4.8 million. I started the car and drove toward the state capitol. It was an hour away. The Lottery Commission office closes at 5. I had time, but not much. My phone sat in the cup holder. I'd turned off location services months ago because I got tired of Lisa asking why I'd stopped at certain places. But I forgot about Life 360. That damn digital leash Lisa had insisted we install 2 years ago after one of her friends caught her husband cheating. I didn't think about it until later. That app was running in the background the whole time I drove to the Capitol, recording everything. The Lottery Commission office was in a bland government building downtown. Beige walls, cheap carpet that smelled like a combination of cleaning solution and disappointment. The woman behind the desk looked exactly like you'd expect. Middle-aged, reading glasses on a chain, a nameplate that said Dorothy. She walked me through the process. I had to fill out claim forms, provide identification, decide whether I wanted the lump sum or annuity payments. I took the lump sum. I needed liquidity more than I needed 30 years of checks. Dorothy explained that it would take about 10 business days to process. The money would be transferred to whatever account I specified. She asked if I wanted publicity. Some states require winners to do press conferences. Mine didn't. I declined. Dorothy nodded like she'd expected that answer. I walked out of that building at 4:45 in the afternoon. The sun was still up, but it had that orange quality it gets in late fall. The air smelled like car exhaust and someone burning leaves somewhere. I sat on a bench outside the building and tried to figure out what I was going to do. I couldn't go home and act normal. Lisa would know something was up, but if I acted weird, she'd push until she got answers. I was trapped between telling her and hiding it. Both options felt like walking into a wood chipper. That's when it hit me. I didn't have to decide right now. I had 10 days before the money showed up, 10 days to figure out how to protect it, how to make sure that when this marriage inevitably fell apart, I wouldn't be left with nothing while she and her family lawyer uncle picked over the remains. I drove home taking a long route, the scenic one that goes past the lake. I needed time to think, to plan. When I pulled into the driveway at 6:30, the house looked exactly the same as it always did. 2-story colonial, white siding that needed a pressure wash. Lisa's Subaru parked on the left side of the garage. I grabbed the milk and bread from the back seat. Both were room temperature by now. Ruined. I'd have to throw them out and make some excuse about forgetting them in the car. Lisa was in the kitchen when I walked in. She was wearing yoga pants and one of my old college t-shirts. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked relaxed, comfortable. She smiled when she saw me. That smile, it wasn't the real one. It was the one she used with difficult clients, the one that didn't reach her eyes. She asked how my day was. I said fine. She asked if I'd gotten the milk. I held up the bag and told her I forgot in the car, and it got warm, so I'd go back out later. She said okay and turned back to the stove where something was simmering. Pasta sauce, maybe. The kitchen smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Then she said it, casual, like it was nothing. She mentioned that she'd noticed my location on Life 360 earlier, downtown, near the government buildings. She wondered if I had jury duty or something work-related. I felt my spine turn to ice. I told her it was a work thing, a meeting with a potential client who worked for the state. She nodded. She didn't ask any follow-up questions. She just nodded and stirred the sauce. That's when I knew. She didn't believe me. She was filing the information away, building a case. Lisa thinks like a lawyer even though she's not one. She collects evidence. She waits until she has enough to be certain before she makes a move. I excused myself and went upstairs. Told her I needed to change out my work clothes. She said dinner would be ready in 20 minutes. I stood in our bedroom and looked around. Everything was perfectly organized. Lisa's side of the closet was color-coordinated. Her dresser had a jewelry box and a few picture frames. One of our wedding, one of her parents, one of the two of us on vacation in Florida 3 years ago when things were still okay. My side was Messier. Clothes I'd worn once but weren't dirty enough to wash yet draped over a chair. My nightstand had a stack of technical manuals and a water glass with residue at the bottom. This room felt like a museum exhibit of a marriage that had died, but no one had bothered to bury yet. Over the next 3 days, Lisa changed, not in big, obvious ways, in small ones. She stopped nagging me about leaving my socks on the floor. She made my favorite dinner 2 nights in a row. She asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. She laughed at my jokes. She was playing a role. I recognized it because I'd seen her do it before. When she wants something from someone, she becomes exactly what they need her to be. Warm, attentive, perfect. I started paying attention to other things. She was on her phone more than usual, texting someone. When I walked into the room, she'd tilt the screen away or lock it quickly. She'd get calls and step into the other room to take them. I heard her voice go low and serious through the walls, but couldn't make out the words. One night, I came downstairs at 2 a.m. to get water. The house was dark, except for the glow of her laptop. In the living room, she was sitting on the couch with her back to me. On the screen, I could see she had multiple tabs open. Legal websites. Something about asset protection. Information about lottery winnings and marital property. She knew, maybe not for certain, but she suspected, and she was doing research. I went back upstairs without getting the water. My throat felt like sandpaper, but I couldn't risk her knowing I'd seen what she was looking at. The lottery money was supposed to hit my account in 10 business days from when I filed a claim. I'd opened a new checking account at a bank Lisa didn't know about. Took an afternoon off work and did it in person. Gave them my office address for the statements instead of our home. 10 days. That's how long I had before the money became real. Before it went from a piece of paper to actual numbers in an actual account. And once it was there, Lisa could find it if she looked hard enough. Her uncle had connections, access to databases, ways of tracking assets. I needed a plan, a real one, not just hiding money in a different bank account like some amateur. I needed legal protection, the kind that would hold up in court when this whole thing inevitably exploded. But who could I trust? Not anyone local. Not anyone who might know Lisa or her family. This town was too small. Everyone knew everyone. The lawyers all played golf together. The accountants all went to the same church. If I walked into any law office within 50 miles, word would get back to Lisa's uncle before I made it to my car. I thought about Marcus, my college roommate who'd moved to Arizona for work. We didn't talk often, but when we did, it was real. He didn't know Lisa well, didn't have any connection to her family, and he worked in finance. He'd know people, the right kind of people, but I couldn't call him from my regular phone. Lisa checks the phone bill. She'd see an hour-long call to Arizona and want to know why. I'd need to figure out a way to reach out without leaving traces. The clock was ticking. 10 days until the money hit. Maybe less time than that before Lisa made her move. I started noticing other things. Small changes in the house. Her laptop was password protected now. It hadn't been before. Her phone never left her sight. She'd take it with her even when she went to the bathroom. One afternoon I came home early. My project got delayed, so I left the office at 3 instead of 6. Lisa's car was in the driveway. I walked in through the garage and heard voices in the kitchen. Lisa was there, and her mother. They both went quiet when they saw me. Too quiet. The kind of silence that means you just interrupted something important. Lisa's mom smiled at me. That fake smile she uses. Told me she was just stopping by to drop off some casserole. There was no casserole on the counter. I said hello and went upstairs. Changed out my work clothes. When I came back down, Her mother was gone. Lisa was loading the dishwasher like nothing had happened. That night in bed, Lisa rolled over and put her hand on my chest. She asked if I was okay. Said I seemed stressed. Distant. She suggested maybe we should take a vacation. Get away for a weekend. Reconnect. I told her work was busy. Maybe in a few months. She left her hand there for another minute. I could feel her wedding ring against my skin. Cold metal. Then she rolled back to her side of the bed and went to sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting down the days. 9 left, then 8, then 7. I started having this recurring thought. What if I was wrong? What if Lisa wasn't plotting anything? What if she was just being a normal wife, and I was a paranoid one? What if her research was innocent? What if her mom really did just stop by randomly? But then I'd remember the look in her eyes when she asked about my location, the way she went silent when I walked into a room, the tabs on her laptop, the phone calls she took in the other room. No, I wasn't wrong. Something was coming. I could feel it the way you feel a storm building before the sky goes dark. 6 days until the money hit my account. I bought a prepaid phone at a drugstore across town. Paid cash. The kid behind the counter barely looked at me. I activated it in the parking lot and put it in the glove compartment of my car. I had Marcus's number memorized. Had to. Couldn't risk saving it anywhere Lisa might find it. I'd call him tomorrow during my lunch break from a parking lot somewhere. Somewhere the Life 360 app wouldn't look suspicious. 5 days left. Then 4. Time was running out, and I still didn't have a solid plan. Just half-formed ideas and growing panic. Lisa made my favorite dinner that night. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots. She'd even bought the expensive bread from the bakery I liked. We ate in the dining room instead of in front of the TV. She asked about my day, actually listened to my answers, laughed at my dumb joke about a bug in the code at work. It was almost nice, almost normal, almost enough to make me forget that this was all performance, that she was playing a role, that somewhere in her mind she was calculating, planning, waiting for the right moment to strike. After dinner, I helped her clean up. We worked in silence. She washed. I dried. The kitchen window was open, and a breeze came through that smelled like cut grass and honeysuckle. For a second, I felt sad. Not for what I was about to lose, but for what we'd already lost years ago, without either of us really noticing. Whatever this marriage had been once, it was gone now. We were just two people going through motions, waiting for the end. That night, I stood in the bathroom at 1 a.m, told Lisa I had an upset stomach and needed some privacy. She rolled over and went back to sleep without saying anything. I looked at myself in the mirror. The fluorescent light over the sink made me look washed out, tired. There were dark circles under my eyes, gray hairs I didn't remember having before at my temples. I thought about what Lisa probably believed was happening. She'd seen the change in my behavior, the secrecy, the weird hours, the fact that I'd stopped fighting with her about stupid things. She probably thought I was having an affair, that I'd found someone else and was planning to leave. That would make sense to her. It would fit the pattern she constructed in her mind. But she had no idea what I was really hiding. Not some other woman. Not a gambling relapse. Not a midlife crisis. I was hiding my future, my freedom, my chance to finally breathe without someone's hand around my throat. She thought I was covering up a betrayal. She didn't realize a betrayal had been happening for years, in small moments, in the way she talked to me like I was a child who couldn't be trusted, in the way she'd weaponized our finances and turned our marriage into a prison I couldn't afford to escape from. Until now, I gripped the edge of the sink. My knuckles went white. I stared at my reflection and made a promise to myself. She thought I was hiding a mistress. She had no idea I was hiding my whole future. For more days until the money hit my account. For more days until everything changed. I needed to move fast. Needed to protect what was mine before she could take it. Before her family could circle the wagons and trap me in legal quicksand. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let them win. 3 days after I bought that prepaid phone, I made the call to Marcus from a McDonald's parking lot 20 miles from home. Told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he told me I needed two things: a lawyer who specializes in asset protection, and a trust. He said he'd make calls. Told me to sit tight. 2 days later, I had a name: Catherine Chun, Delaware, asset protection specialist. I called her from the same McDonald's parking lot during my lunch break. She was sharp, efficient, no small talk. She explained that we create what's called a blind trust. I'd be the beneficiary, but I wouldn't control the assets directly. A trustee would. That separation was key. The setup cost $12,000, worth every penny. The lottery money hit my secret checking account on day 9 for $1,796,000 and change. I stared at that number on my phone for exactly 30 seconds. Then I initiated the wire transfer to the trust Catherine had established. That was yesterday morning. I came home from work at 6:15 on a Thursday evening. Normal time, normal day. Except Lisa's car wasn't alone in the driveway. Her mother's silver Lexus was parked behind it, and next to that, a black Mercedes I recognized as belonging to her Uncle Richard. My stomach dropped. I sat in my car for a minute with the engine running. The garage door was closed. The house lights were on. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving around in the living room. Multiple people. This wasn't a casual family visit. This was planned. I turned off the engine and grabbed my work bag from the passenger seat. Walked up to the front door. My keys felt heavy in my hand. I could hear voices inside. Muffled but serious. The kind of tones people use when they're discussing something important. I opened the door. The conversation stopped immediately, like someone had hit a pause button on the universe. Lisa was standing by the fireplace. Her mother was on the couch. Uncle Richard sat in my favorite chair, the leather recliner I'd bought myself 3 years ago. He had a briefcase open on the coffee table in front of him, papers spread out in neat stacks. On the table next to the papers was a small orange prescription bottle. Xanax. The label had my name on it. I didn't have a Xanax prescription. Lisa came over and kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. She told me her family had stopped by because they were worried about me. Said I'd been acting strange, distant, that they wanted to talk. I looked at Uncle Richard. He was 62 years old, gray hair combed straight back. Expensive suit that probably cost more than my car payment. Reading glasses perched on his nose. He smiled at me, the kind of smile a shark gives right before it bites. He told me to sit down. Said we needed to have a family discussion. I asked what was going on. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Lisa's mother spoke up. She used that soft, concerned tone she reserves for when she's about to say something cruel disguised as care. She said they'd noticed changes in my behavior over the past couple weeks. The secrecy, the unexplained absences, the stress. She said Lisa had told them about my gambling problem from 3 years ago, and they were worried I'd relapsed. I started to say something, but Uncle Richard held up his hand, told me to just listen for now. He picked up one of the papers from the coffee table. It was a printout of my old poker debt, 3 years old, paid off 2 years ago through the humiliating payment plan Lisa had set up. He held it up like it was evidence in a trial. He said they'd done some research, found some troubling patterns, unexplained time gaps on my Life 360 history, visits to the state capitol, strange behavior. He said these were all classic signs of gambling addiction escalating, of someone spiraling out of control. I felt my jaw clench. Told him I wasn't gambling. Told him I'd been to the Capitol for work. That this was ridiculous. Lisa's mother made this sad little sound, like she pitied me. She said denial was part of the disease, that addicts always deny. I looked at Lisa. She was standing by the fireplace with her arms crossed. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Uncle Richard leaned forward in my chair. He said they weren't here to attack me. They were here to help. He explained that they consulted with some professionals, and the recommendation was that I needed support, structure, someone to help manage my finances until I got back on track. He gestured to the papers on the table, said he'd drawn up a temporary financial management agreement, just for 6 months. Give me time to get treatment, to stabilize. Lisa would handle the accounts during that period, make sure bills got paid, make sure I didn't hurt myself or the family financially. He made it sound so reasonable, so caring, so completely for my own good. I noticed Lisa's phone then. She had it in her hand, angled toward me. The screen was dark, but I could see the little red recording light in the reflection of the window behind her. She was recording this, waiting for me to explode, waiting for me to give them exactly what they needed. My mind raced through the possibilities. If I yelled, they have proof of aggressive behavior. If I refused to cooperate, they'd paint me as irrational, unstable. They'd file for emergency conservatorship, freeze my accounts while the court sorted it out. And even though the money wasn't in my accounts anymore, they'd tie me up in legal proceedings for months, maybe longer. I thought about Sun Tzu, The Art of War, a book I'd read in college and never forgotten. Appear weak when you are strong. Let your enemy underestimate you. Give them the victory they expect so they don't see the real battle coming. I sat down, not in a chair, on the floor, just dropped down like my legs gave out, put my head in my hands. Nobody said anything for a moment. I could feel them watching me, waiting. I told them they were right. My voice came out cracked, trembling. I didn't have to fake it much. I was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee and fear for 2 weeks straight. I told them I was so tired, that I couldn't do this anymore, that I needed help. Lisa's mother made a sympathetic sound, came over and put her hand on my shoulder. Her perfume was overwhelming, some floral thing that smelled like a funeral home. Uncle Richard's voice got softer, more gentle. He said that's why they were here, to help. All I had to do was sign the agreement, and they'd take care of everything. I wouldn't have to worry about bills or money or any of it. I could focus on getting better. I asked what the agreement said. He explained it was simple. Lisa would have signing authority on my accounts. She'd manage the household finances, make sure everything stayed current. It was temporary, just 6 months, renewable if needed. He made it sound like a gift. I looked up at him, asked if I had a choice. He smiled that shark smile again, told me of course I had a choice, but he strongly recommended I accept their help. The alternative would be much more complicated. Court proceedings, psychiatric evaluations, things that would go on my permanent record. This way was cleaner, easier, better for everyone. The threat was clear, sign willingly, or they'd force it through the courts. And either way, I'd end up in the same place, under their control. I reached for the pen. Lisa's mother squeezed my shoulder, told me I was making the right choice, that I was being so brave. I signed 3 copies. My handwriting looked shaky. That was an act. Uncle Richard witnessed each signature, dated them, put them in his briefcase. He left 1 copy on the coffee table for me, told me to keep it somewhere safe. He picked up the Xanax bottle, suggested I take 1 now, said it would help me relax, help me sleep. I told him I was fine. He set it back down and said it was there if I needed it, just in case. They stayed for another 20 minutes, talking at me, around me, about me, making plans for my recovery. Lisa's mother suggested I take some time off work. Uncle Richard said he'd contact my employer if needed, explain the situation. Lisa just stood there looking relieved, like a problem had finally been solved. When they finally left, Uncle Richard patted me on the shoulder, told me this was for my own good, called me son. He'd never called me son before. It made my skin crawl. Lisa walked them out. I heard their voices in the driveway, happy, satisfied. The sound of car doors closing, engines starting, tires on asphalt. Then silence. Lisa came back inside, closed the door, locked it. She looked at me still sitting on the floor, and for a second I saw something in her face. Not quite guilt, not quite triumph, something in between. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired. She said I should get some sleep, that things would be better now that we had a plan. I stood up. Told her I was going to take a shower. She nodded and went into the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open, the clink of a wine bottle. She was celebrating. I went upstairs to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the shower to cover any sound, sat on the edge of the tub, and pulled out the prepaid phone from my jacket pocket. The phone I'd had hidden in my car. The phone they didn't know about. I opened the email app. There was a message from Catherine Chun, timestamped 2 hours ago. Transfer complete. Trust established. Documentation filed. You're all set. I read it 3 times. Let it sink in. The money was safe, protected, sitting in a Delaware trust fund that didn't have my name on it as owner, just as beneficiary. The agreement I just signed gave Lisa control over my checking account and savings account, the ones that had a combined balance of about $3,400, enough to cover bills for a month or 2. Nothing else. She thought she'd won. They all did. They thought they'd box me in, taken control, force me to submit. And in a way, they had, just not the way they thought. I'd let them have their victory, their moment of triumph. Let them think they'd outmaneuvered me. Let them relax into the comfortable certainty that they'd gotten what they wanted. Because that's what you do when you're about to destroy someone. You let them get comfortable first. You let them think they've already won. You wait until they're not looking anymore, not watching as carefully, not planning their next move because they think the game is over. Sun Tzu was right about a lot of things, but the most important thing he wrote was this: all warfare is based on deception. I just signed away control of accounts that barely had enough money to matter, given Lisa signing authority over a checking account with our mortgage payment and grocery money in it. Let Uncle Richard believe he'd successfully put me under conservatorship without having to go through the courts. They'd gotten exactly what they came for, which meant they'd stop looking, stop digging, stop trying to figure out what I was really doing. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. The shower was still running. Steam fogged the glass. My reflection looked pale, exhausted, beaten down. Perfect. I deleted Catherine's email, turned off the phone, and wrapped it in a plastic bag, hid it in the heating vent behind the towel rack, somewhere Lisa would never look. Then I got in the shower and let the hot water run over me until it started going cold. Washed away the feeling of Uncle Richard's hand on my shoulder, the smell of Lisa's mother's perfume, the taste of humiliation I'd had to swallow to sell the performance. It was worth it. Every second of letting them think they'd broken me. Every moment of playing weak, while I was actually 3 steps ahead. When I came out of the bathroom, Lisa was in bed. She had her laptop open, probably emailing her mother, telling her how well the intervention went, how I'd finally seen reason, how they'd saved me from myself. I got dressed in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, climbed into bed, turned away from her. She said goodnight. I didn't respond. I lay there in the dark, listening to her type, the soft click of keys, the slight shift of her weight on the mattress. After a while, she closed the laptop and turned off her bedside lamp. The room went dark except for the glow of the alarm clock. 11:42. She fell asleep quickly. I could tell by her breathing, that slow, steady rhythm she always had when she was really out. I stayed awake. Around 1 in the morning, I got up quietly, went downstairs. The house was dark and still. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the furnace kicking on. Normal sounds. Everything normal. Everything exactly as it should be. I went to my laptop in the home office, opened it, checked my regular bank account. Lisa had already logged in using her new access, changed the password. I couldn't get in anymore. She'd wasted no time taking control. I smiled in the dark. Let her have it. Let her manage that account. Let her feel powerful. Let her think she'd won. I closed the laptop and went back upstairs, got back in bed, closed my eyes. This time I actually slept. For the first time in 2 weeks, I slept without nightmares, without anxiety, without that crushing weight on my chest. Because the game had changed. They thought they were playing chess. They thought they'd just checkmated me, put me in a position where I couldn't move, couldn't fight back, couldn't do anything but submit to their control. They didn't realize I wasn't playing chess. I was playing poker, and I'd just gone all in on a hand they couldn't see. The money was gone from their reach. Protected, safe, hidden behind layers of legal structure they hadn't thought to look for because they'd been so focused on the obvious accounts, the ones with my name on them. Uncle Richard had been so thorough with his little agreement, covered all the bases, made sure Lisa had access to everything I owned, every account, every asset, every piece of financial control, except the one that mattered, the one they didn't know existed, the one that was sitting in Delaware right now gathering interest while they congratulated themselves on their successful intervention. I thought about the Xanax bottle, sitting downstairs on the coffee table, the prescription with my name on it that I'd never requested. They'd probably gotten it from some friend of Uncle Richard's, some doctor who owed him a favor. It was a prop, evidence for their narrative. The unstable gambling addict who needed medication, who needed to be controlled for his own safety. I wondered if they'd actually try to push me toward taking it regularly, create a dependency, make their story more convincing, or if they'd just leave it there as a reminder, a symbol of how sick I was, how much I needed them. It didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. They could tell whatever story they wanted, build whatever narrative made them feel good. I had what I needed: time, space, security. The money was protected. Now I just had to wait for the right moment. The next morning I woke up to find Lisa already gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, told me she'd gone to her mother's for the day, that I should rest, that she'd be back that evening. She signed it with a heart. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, logged into my email. There was a message from work asking if I was okay. Said Lisa had called and explained I was dealing with some personal issues, that I'd be taking a few days off. They hoped I felt better soon. She'd already started managing my life, taking control, making decisions. I hadn't authorized her to call my work, but according to the agreement I'd signed, she had the authority to handle my affairs, and apparently that included my employment. I called my boss, told him there'd been a misunderstanding, that I was fine, that I'd be in on Monday. He sounded relieved, said to take care of myself, that the team needed me but my health came first. I hung up and finished my coffee, looked around the kitchen. This house that had been my home for 8 years, that had felt like a prison for the last 3. Everything looked different now, sharper, clearer, like I was seeing it all for the first time without the fog of routine and denial. This marriage was over, had been for a while. We'd just been going through the motions, pretending everything was fine while slowly suffocating each other. The lottery winnings hadn't ruined anything. They'd just exposed what was already rotten. I went into the garage and found some boxes, started packing. Nothing obvious, just personal things. Photos from before I met Lisa, some books, a few items that mattered to me, things I'd want when this was all over, when the dust settled and I was starting fresh somewhere new. I put the boxes in my car trunk, covered them with a blanket. Lisa wouldn't notice. She never looked in my trunk. Why would she? She had what she wanted: control, access, the certainty that she'd won. That afternoon, I drove to a storage unit facility on the other side of town, rented a small unit under my name, paid cash for 3 months in advance, moved the boxes there, came home and erased any trace that I'd been gone. When Lisa came home that evening, she found me on the couch watching television, some mindless cop show. She asked how I was feeling. I told her better. She seemed pleased, relieved. She heated up some leftovers for dinner, and we ate in silence. She asked if I'd thought about seeing someone, a therapist, for the gambling addiction. I told her I'd think about it. She nodded, said she'd help me find someone good, someone who specialized in addiction. I thanked her, told her I appreciated her support. She smiled, a real smile this time. She actually believed I was grateful, that I saw this as them helping me instead of controlling me. The cognitive dissonance was almost beautiful. That night, I lay in bed, listening to her breathe, thinking about the storage unit across town with boxes of my life in it, thinking about the Delaware Trust with $4.8 million in it, thinking about Uncle Richard's smug face when he called me son. I thought about Marcus on the phone telling me I needed to act fast. Catherine Chun explaining the legal protections of a blind trust. The look on Dorothy's face at the Lottery Commission when I declined the publicity. Every piece had fallen into place. Not perfectly, not without cost, but well enough. I'd lost control of my checking account, lost my pride, had to sit on the floor and pretend to break while they recorded me, had to sign papers giving my wife authority over the scraps of my financial life. But I'd kept what mattered. I'd protected the future. And more importantly, I'd convinced them they'd already won, which meant they'd stop looking for threats, stop planning their next move, stop treating me like an adversary, and started treating me like a defeated enemy who just needed management. That was their mistake. Thinking the game was over, thinking they'd achieved their objective, thinking I was down and would stay down. I'd wait, let them think they'd won, let them get comfortable in their victory, let them feel secure. Because I knew how people like Uncle Richard operated. Greed doesn't stop it enough. It always wants more. They'd gotten temporary control. Soon they'd want permanent control. They'd go for conservatorship, real legal authority that wouldn't expire in 6 months. And when they did, when they dragged me into court thinking it would be a formality, thinking I'd already been broken and wouldn't fight back, that's when they'd finally understand what game they'd actually been playing. They hadn't been playing against a gambling addict having a breakdown. They'd been playing against someone who'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to win is to let your opponent think they've already won. I closed my eyes and smiled in the dark. Lisa stirred next to me, but didn't wake up. The alarm clock showed 2:33 in the morning. The house was silent, except for the usual sounds. The refrigerator, the furnace, the settling of old wood. Everything was in place. The money was secure. The evidence was documented. The timeline would reveal itself when they made their next move. Uncle Richard thought he'd protected Lisa's interests. He thought he'd box me in with his temporary agreement. What he didn't realize was that temporary would never be enough for someone like him. Lawyers like Richard don't settle for 6-month solutions. They go for permanent wins. Total control. He'd come back. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe a month, he'd file for permanent conservatorship, claim I was still unstable, still a danger to myself financially, use the agreement I just signed as evidence that I'd already admitted I couldn't be trusted, and he'd walk into court thinking it was a formality, thinking the hard part was already done, thinking he just needed a judge's signature to make it official and permanent. That's when I'd show him what I'd really been doing. That's when the post-nuptial agreement he drafted so carefully 3 years ago would come back to destroy everything he thought he'd built. That's when he'd realize the $4.8 million he'd been planning to control didn't exist in any account he could touch. But for now, I'd wait, play the broken man, let them feel secure in their victory, let them think the war was over when really they'd only won the first skirmish. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. And this time, I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was setting the trap and waiting for them to walk into it. 5 weeks after I signed that temporary financial management agreement, I got served with papers. Court summons. Lisa's Uncle Richard was petitioning for a permanent conservatorship, claiming I was mentally unstable, a danger to myself financially, that the temporary arrangement had proven I couldn't be trusted to manage my own affairs. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. County courthouse, 10 in the morning on a Thursday. I called Catherine Chin the same day, told her it was time. She said she'd been expecting the call, asked if I wanted her to fly out for the hearing. I told her no. She'd already done her part. The trust was bulletproof. Instead, she recommended someone local, a lawyer named David Brennan, who specialized in conservatorship defense. Former prosecutor. Tough. Expensive. Perfect. I met with Brennan 2 days later at his office downtown. Glass and steel building. Conference room with a view of the river. He listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. Told me this was going to be fun. The 5 weeks leading up to the hearing had been strange, surreal. Lisa treated me like a child who needed supervision. She'd taken over all the finances, paid the bills from the account she now controlled, asked me every morning if I was okay, if I needed anything. Her voice always had this patronizing sweetness to it, like she was talking to someone recovering from brain surgery. I played along, thanked her for her help, told her I was feeling better, more stable. She seemed relieved, happy even, like she'd saved me from myself, and I was finally seeing it her way. Her mother came by twice a week, always with some excuse, dropping off food, checking on me, really just making sure I was still compliant, still broken. Uncle Richard called once, asked how I was doing, told me the permanent arrangement was just a formality, something to protect everyone, make sure I didn't relapse. His voice was warm, fatherly. It made my skin crawl. I went to work, came home, watched television, lived the life of someone who'd given up, someone who'd accepted defeat. They ate it up, every performance, every submissive nod, every quiet agreement. The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 5. Couldn't sleep anyway. Made coffee and sat at the kitchen table while Lisa got ready. She came downstairs in a navy blue dress. Professional, conservative, the outfit of someone attending something serious, something that mattered. She asked if I was nervous. I told her a little. She squeezed my shoulder, said it would be fine, that this was for the best, that soon everything would be settled and we could move forward. I nodded and finished my coffee. We drove separately. She went early with her mother. I met David Brennan in the parking lot at 9:30. He was waiting by his car, black BMW, tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He shook my hand and asked if I was ready. I told him I'd been ready for 5 weeks. The courthouse smelled exactly how you'd expect. Old wood, floor wax, that particular blend of anxiety and bureaucracy that hangs in the air of places where lives get decided. The hallway echoed with footsteps, people in suits walking with purpose, others sitting on benches looking lost, scared. We found the courtroom on the 3rd floor, small, maybe 20 rows of benches, with paneling that had gone dark with age. An American flag in the corner. The judge's bench sat elevated at the front, empty for now. Lisa was already there, front row on the left side with her mother and Uncle Richard. They looked confident, relaxed. Richard had his briefcase open on the bench next to him, papers organized in neat folders. He glanced back when we walked in, gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the smile of someone who'd already won and was just here for the formality. David and I sat on the right side. He spread out his own documents on the bench, much smaller stack than Richard's. I noticed Lisa kept looking back at us, at David specifically. She hadn't expected me to bring a lawyer, especially not one who looked like he charged $500 an hour. The bailiff came in at 9:55, told everyone to rise. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, late 50s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked tired, like she'd already been through 6 cases that morning, and this was just another file on a long list. She sat down, told everyone to be seated, called the case. Petition for a permanent conservatorship. Richard Stone representing the petitioner Lisa Stone. David Brennan representing the respondent. Judge Morrison asked Richard to present his case. Richard stood up, cleared his throat, launched into his argument like he was giving a closing statement in a murder trial. He talked about my gambling problem from 3 years ago, the debt I'd accumulated, the money I'd stolen from our savings account. He used the word stolen. Made it sound like I'd robbed a bank instead of making a stupid mistake at a poker game. He explained how Lisa had tried to help me by implementing financial oversight through the postnuptial agreement, how that hadn't been enough, how I continued to show signs of instability, erratic behavior, unexplained absences, suspicious activity. He painted a picture of someone spiraling, someone who couldn't be trusted, someone who needed protection from himself. He submitted the temporary financial management agreement I'd signed 5 weeks ago. pointed out that I'd acknowledged my own inability to handle my affairs, that I'd voluntarily agreed to Lisa's oversight, that this was simply making permanent what had already proven necessary. Judge Morrison looked over the documents, asked about my current financial situation. Richard stood up straighter. This was his moment, his big reveal. He claimed I'd recently come into significant money. Wouldn't specify how much, but implied it was substantial. Said I was hiding assets. Try and keep money from my wife and avoid responsibility. That without permanent oversight, I'd gamble it all away or lose it through poor decisions. The judge looked skeptical. Asked how he knew about this money if I was hiding it. Richard smiled. Said he had reason to believe I'd won the state lottery. That my wife had observed suspicious behavior. Unexplained trips to the state capitol. Changes in demeanor. All consistent with someone who'd come into sudden wealth. Judge Morrison turned to me. Asked if I'd won the lottery. David stood up before I could answer. Said he'd address that question in his response. The judge nodded and told Richard to continue. Richard wrapped up his argument. Said the court should grant permanent conservatorship to protect marital assets and ensure my well-being. That Lisa was the appropriate person to manage my affairs given her paralegal background and understanding of financial matters. That this was in everyone's best interest, especially mine. He sat down looking pleased with himself. Lisa's mother reached over and patted his arm. Lisa sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, eyes straight ahead. Judge Morrison asked David if he wanted to cross-examine. David said no, said he'd present his defense instead. He stood up, didn't rush, took his time, let the silence build. David's voice was calm, almost casual. He said he'd like to address Mr. Stone's concerns in reverse order, starting with the alleged lottery winnings. He pulled a document from his folder, submitted it to the court. It was a financial disclosure. My current bank accounts. Checking account with $3,400. Savings account with $800. Credit card with a small balance. That was it. Judge Morrison looked it over. Asked Richard where the millions were. Richard stood up. Said I was obviously hiding the money. That I'd moved it somewhere to avoid disclosure. That this proved I needed oversight. Lisa couldn't help herself. She turned around in her seat. Said I'd won the lottery. That she knew I had. That someone needed to check with the lottery commission. The judge told her to be quiet unless asked to speak. Told Richard to control his client. David waited for the room to settle. Then he continued. Said that yes, his client had won the lottery for $0.8 million after taxes. But there was a complication. He submitted another document. This one from the Delaware Lottery Commission. Well, not the commission itself, but from a legal entity, a trust, the Blue Horizon Trust, established in Delaware. The trust had claimed the winning ticket, not me personally. The trust. Judge Morrison studied the document, asked why a trust would claim a lottery ticket. David explained, said his client was listed as the sole beneficiary of the trust. But beneficiary and owner weren't the same thing. The trust owned the assets. My client simply received benefits from it. Under Delaware law, the trust was a separate legal entity. A conservator couldn't access trust assets because the respondent didn't legally own them. Richard was on his feet. Said this was obviously a scheme. That I created the trust to hide marital assets. That it should be dissolved and the money brought back under my name so it could be properly managed. David smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile of someone about to drop a bomb. He said even if the court decided to dissolve the trust, which would be difficult given Delaware's trust protections, there was another issue, a much bigger issue. He pulled out a third document, held it up, said this was a post-nuptial agreement, executed 3 years ago, drafted by Richard Stone's own firm, signed by both parties, notarized and filed. He handed it to the judge, pointed to Section 4, subsection C. Read it out loud. Any income derived from gambling, lotteries, or games of chance shall be considered separate property of the party who earned it, and shall not be subject to claims of marital property or community property division. The courtroom went silent, not the normal quiet of people listening. The stunned silence of people realizing something major just happened. Judge Morrison read the clause herself. looked up at Richard, asked him to confirm this was his firm's work. Richard's face had gone pale. He stood there, mouth slightly open. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. David continued, said the postnuptial agreement was designed to protect Mrs. Stone's income from her husband's gambling debts. But in doing so, it also separated any gambling winnings, made them the sole property of whoever won. Since his client won the lottery, the money was legally as a loan, not marital property, not subject to any conservatorship arrangement. He looked directly at Richard, said it appeared Mr. Stone had been so focused on protecting his niece from potential losses that he'd inadvertently given away her claim to any potential winnings. I watched Lisa's face, saw the exact moment it clicked, saw her realize what she'd done 3 years ago. She'd been so angry about the poker debt, so determined to protect her $60,000 annual salary, so focused on making sure I could never touch her money again. She'd given away $4.8 million to do it. Her mother leaned over, whispered something. Lisa shook her head, whispered back. Her mother's face went from confused to horrified. She turned and looked at Richard. He was still standing, still silent, still processing what had just happened. Judge Morrison asked Richard if he had a response. He stammered something about unintended consequences, about how the spirit of the agreement was different from the letter, about how this couldn't have been the intention. David cut him off, said intention was irrelevant. The agreement was clear, unambiguous. Both parties had signed it with full knowledge of its terms. It had been in effect for 3 years. Neither party had sought to modify or dissolve it. Under law, it was binding. The judge sat back in her chair, looked at the document spread in front of her, looked at Richard, at Lisa, at me. She asked if anyone else had anything to add. Richard tried one last time, said I was still mentally unstable, that even if the money was separate property, I needed protection for myself, that the conservatorship should still be granted to prevent me from squandering my separate assets. David responded, said his client held a job as a senior software engineer, had maintained steady employment for 12 years, paid his bills on time, had no criminal record, no history of psychiatric treatment, no evidence of current instability beyond Mr. Stone's speculation. He pointed out that the so-called gambling addiction was a single incident 3 years ago, that his client had paid back the debt in full, that he complied with every term of the post-nuptial agreement, that he'd even voluntarily signed the temporary management agreement to keep the peace, said none of that constituted grounds for permanent conservatorship, that the real motivation here was obvious. The petitioners thought there was money to control. Now that they'd learned the money was legally unreachable, the court should see this petition for what it was, a failed attempt at a money grab. Judge Morrison didn't deliberate long. She said the petition for permanent conservatorship was denied, said the evidence didn't support a finding of incapacity, that the respondent appeared to be managing his life adequately, that the financial concerns raised by the petitioner were based on speculation rather than fact. She terminated the temporary management agreement, said I was restored to full control of my own affairs effective immediately. She looked at Richard, told him she was disappointed to see such a thin case brought before a court, that conservatorship was a serious matter and shouldn't be used as a tool for marital disputes. She stopped short of sanctioning him, but the warning was clear. Case dismissed. The bailiff called the next case. We were done. I stood up. David shook my hand, told me congratulations, said I had played it perfectly. I thanked him, paid him his retainer from the small checking account I still controlled, $2,500, worth every cent. Lisa was already out in the hallway when we left the courtroom. Her mother was gone, probably couldn't stand to watch anymore. Richard was walking away quickly, not looking back, his briefcase clutched in one hand, the swagger gone from his step. Lisa stood there, alone. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confidence she had walking in completely evaporated. I walked past her, didn't stop, didn't look at her. She called my name, said we needed to talk, that this was all a mistake, that we could work this out. I kept walking. She followed, said she was sorry. that her family had pushed her into it, that she thought she was helping, that we could fix this. I stopped at the elevator, pushed the button, turned to look at her, told her there was nothing to fix. It was already broken, had been for years. We'd just been too comfortable or too scared to admit it. She started crying, said she didn't want a divorce, that we could go to counseling, start over, forget any of this happened. The elevator arrived. I stepped in, told David to file for divorce. Today, irreconcilable differences. The doors closed on Lisa standing in the hallway, still crying, still not understanding that this wasn't about the money or the lottery or the conservatorship. It was about trust and control and the slow suffocation of a marriage that had turned into a prison neither of us remembered entering. The divorce took 4 months. Clean, simple. The post-nup made it straightforward. Separate property stayed separate. Marital property got divided. She got the house. I didn't fight her on it. Didn't want it anyway. Too many memories of the person I'd been when I lived there. The person who'd felt trapped and small and beaten down. The house came with the mortgage, and the property taxes, and the maintenance. All the things that had seemed manageable with 2 incomes, but were crushing with one. Especially one paralegal salary. Lisa tried to refinance. Banks weren't interested. She tried to sell. Market was soft. House needed work. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved in with her mother after 6 months. Couldn't make the payments. The bank foreclosed a year later. Not my problem anymore. Uncle Richard had problems of his own. Someone filed a complaint with the state bar. Anonymous tip. Alleged ethical violations. Using his position to pressure family members. Conflict of interest. Misuse of legal authority. The Bar Association launched an investigation. They didn't disbar him. Too hard to prove. But he got a formal reprimand. Had to take ethics courses. Lost some clients who didn't like the attention. His reputation took a hit. Again, not my problem. Though I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile when I heard about it. Lisa tried the social media route. Posted vague things about emotional manipulation, financial abuse. Made herself the victim of a toxic marriage. Some people believed her. Most didn't. Mainly because I never responded, never posted, never defended myself. Just lived quietly and let her story fall apart from lack of evidence. It's hard to paint someone as abusive when they're not fighting back, when they're not engaging, when they're just existing peacefully somewhere else. I moved into a rental. High-rise downtown. 12th floor. 2 bedrooms. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. Came furnished. Cost twice what I'd been paying for the mortgage, but I could afford it now. Could afford a lot of things. I didn't buy a Ferrari. Didn't buy a boat. Didn't do any of the stupid things lottery winners supposedly do. I bought a Volvo. 3 years old. Certified pre-owned. Safe. Reliable. Boring. I bought good groceries. Not extravagant. Just good. Steaks from the butcher counter. Fresh produce. The fancy bread. I go to Costco on Tuesday mornings when everyone else was at work. Walk the aisles slowly. Put things in my cart without checking prices. Not because I was being reckless. Because I could afford not to care. That's what freedom felt like. Not luxury. Not excess. Just the absence of that clench in your stomach when you look at a price tag. I started building a house. Found some land outside the city. 5 acres. Trees. Privacy. Hired an architect. Good one. Told him I wanted something simple. Clean lines. Lots of light. A workshop. Space to breathe. It would take a year to build. Maybe more. I wasn't in a hurry. The rental was fine. The river view was nice. I had time. I worked less. Negotiated down to 30 hours a week. My manager wasn't happy, but I didn't care. The money from the job was irrelevant now. I worked because I like solving problems. Because coding was a puzzle my brain enjoyed. But I didn't need the stress of 50-hour weeks anymore. I saw my kids every other weekend. Took them to movies. Bought them dinner. Didn't try to buy their love with expensive gifts. Just spent time. Listened to them talk about school and friends and all the normal things kids worry about. They were good kids. Better than their parents deserve, probably. One Tuesday morning, I was at Costco, 9:15. The place was empty except for seniors and people like me who didn't have to be anywhere. I was standing in the meat section looking at ribeyes, really nice ones, marbled, perfect thickness. The price was $48 for a pack of 4. 2 months ago, that would have made me pause, calculate, decide if it was worth it or if I should get the cheaper cuts. Now I just put them in my cart. Didn't think about it. Didn't feel guilty. Just made the choice I wanted to make. That's when it hit me. That was the win. Not the millions in the trust. Not the house being built. Not the Volvo or the view or any of it. The win was standing in a Costco on a Tuesday morning, putting expensive steaks in my cart, without anxiety, without that voice in my head doing the math, without feeling like I had to justify or explain or ask permission. I finished my shopping, checked out, loaded everything in a Volvo, drove back to the rental, put the groceries away, made myself lunch, sat by the window, and ate it while looking at the river. My phone buzzed. Email from Catherine Chun. Annual trust report. Assets had grown. Good investments. Solid returns. Everything managed properly by the trustee in Delaware. I didn't have to do anything. Just receive the report and know that my future was secure. I closed the email and put my phone down. Thought about the last year. About the lottery ticket I'd checked in a Walmart parking lot. About the fear and the planning and the performance. About sitting on the floor of my living room pretending to break while they recorded me. About Uncle Richard's shark smile. About the judge's face when David read that post-nup clause. About Lisa crying in the courthouse hallway. I didn't feel guilty. Probably should have, but didn't. She'd made her choices. They all had. The post-nup was her idea. The conservatorship was their plan. The intervention was their attack. I just defended myself, used the weapons they'd given me, turned their greed against them. Was it cold? Maybe. Was it calculated? Absolutely. But so was what they'd tried to do to me. They'd wanted to take everything, control me, turn me into a dependent, a ward, someone who couldn't make decisions without their permission. They'd wanted to break me for real. I'd just broken them first. I thought about what my dad used to say. He was a mechanic, worked with his hands his whole life, died when I was 25, heart attack at 52, too much stress, too many cigarettes, not enough money or rest or joy. He told me once that the measure of a man isn't what he does when he's strong. It's what he does when he's weak, when he's backed into a corner, when everyone thinks he's beaten. That's when you learn what someone's really made of. I'd been backed into that corner. Had everyone I was supposed to trust try and take everything from me. And I'd found a way out, not through violence or cruelty, through patience, through planning, through using their own weapons against them. Sun Tzu would have approved. I won, not because I had money. Money was just a tool, numbers in an account. I won because they underestimated me, because they thought being weak meant being helpless, because they confused submission with defeat. They saw what they wanted to see, a broken man, a gambling addict, someone who needed to be controlled. They never considered that the broken man might be playing a role, that the submission might be strategic, that the defeat might be temporary. That was their mistake, the fatal one. They thought the game was over when I signed that agreement. They didn't realize I was just setting up the next move. Money doesn't change people. It just turns on the lights in a dark room. Shows you what was already there. Lisa had always been controlling. Her family had always been predatory. I'd just been too comfortable or too scared to see it clearly. The money gave me the ability to see. And once I saw, I couldn't unsee. Couldn't go back to pretending. Couldn't keep living in that house with that woman and that family and all their expectations and demands. The sun was setting. The river turned gold. The city lights started coming on one by one. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic below. This was freedom, not wealth, not luxury. Freedom, the freedom to eat dinner at 9 at night because I felt like it, to work 30 hours instead of 50, to buy steaks without anxiety, to build a house on my own timeline, to wake up without someone analyzing my every move, to exist without justification. That's what $4.8 million bought me. Not stuff, not status. Peace. I stood up and walked a window, looked out at the city, all those lights, all those people living their lives. Some of them probably in situations like I'd been in. Trapped, controlled, suffocating slowly without realizing it. I hoped they'd find their way out, however they needed to, whatever it took. Because life's too short to spend it in a cage, even a comfortable one, even one you helped build yourself. The lottery ticket was luck, pure chance. But everything after that, that was choice, strategy, willingness to play the long game, to endure humiliation for a greater purpose, to let people think they'd won while quietly preparing their defeat. You might be thinking this is just a revenge story, that I'm the hero and they're the villains and justice prevailed. But that's not quite right. There are no heroes here, just people making choices, some good, some bad. All of us try and protect ourselves and get what we think we deserve. Lisa thought she deserved security, control, protection from my mistakes. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had screwed up with that poker debt. I had broken her trust. But she went too far, took too much, tried to turn me into someone who needed permission to exist. And when she thought I had money, she tried to take that too. So who's the villain? Who's the hero? Maybe we both are. Maybe neither. Maybe we're just two people who should never have been married in the first place, who stayed together too long out of comfort and fear, and who finally found a reason to end it. The lottery was just a catalyst, the thing that brought everything into focus, made the invisible visible, turned on those lights in the dark room. It's been 2 years now. The house is finished. I moved in last month. It's everything I wanted. Space, light, quiet. A workshop where I build furniture when I need to work with my hands. A deck where I drink coffee and watch the sunrise. The kids come over. They like it here. No tension. No walking on eggshells. Just time with their dad in a place that feels calm. I don't date much. Not ready. Maybe someday. But for now, I'm good with just being alone. Being myself without performance or pretense. The trust keeps growing. Catherine sends reports twice a year. I don't touch the principal. Live off the investment income and my reduced salary. Save most of it. I'll never need all this money. Might set up scholarships someday. Or fund something useful. Haven't decided yet. You want to know if I'd do it again? If I buy that lottery ticket, knowing everything that would happen? Yeah, I would. Not for the money, for the clarity. For the excuse to finally end something that should have ended years ago. For the chance to see who people really were when real stakes were on the table. The lottery didn't ruin my life. It saved it by forcing me to save myself. So here's my question for you. Yeah, you. Sitting there listening to this story. Judging whether I'm the good guy or the bad guy. Wondering if I'm telling the truth or exaggerating for effect. Take a look at your own life. Your own relationships, your own comfortable cages. Are you sure you know the terms of the agreements you've signed? Are you confident the people you trust aren't quietly positioning themselves for the moment you become valuable enough to exploit? Are you absolutely certain that your spouse isn't sitting in a lawyer's office right now, drafting some agreement that sounds protective but is really a trap? Check. Seriously, check. Because the worst cage is the one you don't know you're in until it's too late to escape. I got lucky. I found my key before they could throw it away. What about you?